things: auxiliary power max and stat starship particle generators. And those correspond to the two bonuses that we see in the tooltips here. Plus
And
5
this
maximum
basically what we're
auxiliary
looking
power.
at right now in the item editor is kind of a very fancy Excel spreadsheet, right?
Yep. Yeah, this is what we actually call a spreadsheet editor. And this spreadsheet, I'm going to take you on a quick little ride. Let me move this up a little and neaten things up. As you can see, there is a lot of data in every power in the game.
Ooh, so much,
So,
much cells, many data.
yep. Fortunately, when we have experienced system designers, they know what almost all these things do. And oftentimes we can start from an existing power and say, this one is similar, and then we want to change it to do the things we want. But for this particular one, we want to find out how come I was getting particle generator on my stats and then it went away suddenly, but my max power benefit was working. So the first thing I'm going to look at, since this is a passive power, which is described here, type passive, that means that it has an application cycle. And every some number of seconds, the engine says, recompute this power's values. Now, you might imagine that if you have a very high application rate on a power that does a lot of computation, that could cause problems on the server. We have
Oh,
some tricks to get around that sort of thing.
we've caused that before, somewhat
Oh,
recently.
yes. We'll talk about that later. So, as I go down this editor list, here it is, the activate period. How often does this power refresh? Every 999,999 seconds.
um,
And what that means is this power gets applied once and then it never does an update. Um, Now, that's probably okay if if its attributes here are set to last forever, because it'll automatically apply once when you equip the console. It activates it and then it says, don't worry about this anymore. The bonuses have been applied, they will stay on you. If you move to another map, they immediately get applied once when the map move completes. If you move to a ground map, all of those powers go away because you're not on your starship anymore. We hope. And so let's take a look at how these attributes are built. These are affecting the basic functionality of your skill rating or your auxiliary power. They are type magnitude, which means that they have a value, a magnitude of how much they affect things. But if you have bonuses that affect power magnitudes, it will affect these magnitudes. So if you had something that caused some sort of feedback loop that says anything that gives you a bonus to your particle generators gets a higher bonus, this would be affected by it.
Mm.
Stack type. This is a replacement stack that's in a stacker, subsys max aux. And what this means is that,
Jesse, can a stack
yeah,
of all stacks contain itself?
no, set theory. Uh, the proof for that is pretty wild. So the uh, so this tells it how it's going to stack with other things that apply modifiers to your max power. But this one is type refresh duration. So that says, oh, anytime that the power gets reapplied, which remember happens once every million seconds, just extend the duration for the how long the particle generator exotic bonus lasts. And here is our culprit, the actual duration. The power max bonus lasts forever, but only 4 seconds on our exotic particle power.
Huh.
So we're going to change that to last forever. So once it's applied, it lasts forever. But it has there's another flag elsewhere in this that says that the power goes away, or that attribute, the bonus goes away if the power goes away. And what causes that to happen? When you unequip the console. So if I remove the console, this forever power should go away. So let's take a look at my stats. There it is, exotic particle generator. I'm getting 8 points in it. I'm going to unequip this console, and it went away. And then I'll re-equip it, and it came back. And we'll wait 4 seconds, and it stays. Looks pretty good.
That's pretty good. Now,
Yeah.
the obvious answer to how that happened is um, user error of some kind. But what
Right.
was it copied from another console? How do you think that 4 got in there?
Almost certainly this was copied from another console that did use a passive that got a regular update cycle. It's really common for us to do something like say, this power lasts for 4 seconds, but it has an update every 3 seconds. And so as long as the power stays on, every 3 seconds, it reapplies it, refreshes that duration, and then keeps going. In this case, it was saying go for 4 seconds, and then it wouldn't refresh it for another million seconds. 1 million seconds later, you'd get another 4 seconds of the particle generator bonus, which
So
is
if you on live right now, I want
right,
someone to figure out
exotic
how long a
partigen.
million seconds is, and then run a test to see if they get the power back for another 4 seconds.
That's a kind of a long time. 1 million seconds is 12 days. Our server doesn't stay up that long because we
Oh
do our
yeah, no, you
weekly
won't ever get
reboots.
that.
Yep. Yeah. So what would happen though is each time that you entered a map, you would get it for the first 4 seconds that you're on the map because it applies each time you first load into a space map, um, and then it's gone. So
Uh,
now,
Rubre Ducky wants to know what would happen if you did a negative duration.
um, okay, so a negative duration typically would just cause this not to apply. It would say, oh, I'm going to apply this power. Has it expired? Yes, it has, because its expiration time is sometime in the past. Therefore, remove it immediately. And so it would not apply at all. But things can get funny because we have some powers that modify durations and cooldowns of other powers. So for instance, I could apply a power that says I'm going to do a duration minus to other powers with a specific category. So now suddenly your power that normally lasts 20 seconds only lasts for 15.
Hey, Jesse, before you navigate away
Mm-hmm.
entirely from this particular console, there is a report coming in from chat that I don't know which way it's
Mm-hmm.
supposed to go, but Augie says the description of the console says it affects all weapons, but it doesn't affect torpedoes and mines. And is that intentional? And if not, is that something we can fix right now while we're staring at it?
Um, so that would go to the active power, the ability that affects your buddies when you use it. And that's this power right here, Cheyenne T6 active. Um, it has 4 attributes, as they're called, attrib mods you can see here. All of them are science buffs on the target, and they affect the speed period, speed recharge, power drain, and then they have an apply power. An apply power is a way of saying, in addition, add this other functionality on top of it. Um, and let's take a look at how these things are categorized. Looks like they are categorized to affect anything that is directed energy weapons, and it ignores anything that's not affected by weapon haste and advanced radiant beams and cannons. So if we wanted to change that, we would say, okay, let's look for got my fingers off the home key. Projectiles, and say this web bonus can now affect projectiles. So you would add that to the effects power categories, and that should affect the speed period and speed recharge on projectile weapons if we did that. Um, as for the other two, let's see if they've got any weird categories on them. Let's see. The apply power is the one that applies the firing modes. And as you can see here, it goes to a different power that rolls randomly to see what the target gets. And then our third attrib mod, sorry about all this going back and forth, is affecting power drain, which of course doesn't matter with torpedoes. They aren't typically affected by weapon power. So in theory, that fix would be just as simple as adding the projectile tags here so that it affects those power categories. Anything that's a projectile weapon gets that speed bonus. But I'm not going to check that in right now because I haven't tested it, and I don't want to check that in willy-nilly without making sure that something like that works, um, which is a little outside the scope of what we prepared for today's
Yeah,
stream.
for sure.
However, it is totally something that could be done quite easily. I am going to go ahead and submit the fleet power network change at the end of this stream. No need to go through all of those hoops right now.
Yeah.
But that will go through, it'll go to QA, and then if QA signs off, it'll go to production. Production will include it in the build, and then it will go into the game.
just to expand on that very quick rundown that Jesse just did, that means that it'll be sent to QA. The Jira that was sent to Jesse to fix this bug, the hypothetical Jira that doesn't exist, would go
Mhm.
to QA to look at. They would look it over. They would put it through its paces and run it through a bunch of tests and things of that nature, and then if they found out it was broken, they'd send it back to Jesse. If they found out it was working, they would send it to production to include this check-in that Jesse is going to make at the end in the next build.
That's right. Do we have other questions coming through the stream before I move on?
Anybody else got any questions about this specifically before, and not when are you going to fix this bug? That's not a question.
Right. Got plenty of bugs to fix. Believe
Yeah.
me, no shortage.
Let's see. Italy. Uh, fragrance-free Vaseline. The whale probe is working as intended by not existing.
Believe me, like we would love to put the whale probe into the game. I love the whale probe. Al loved the whale probe.
Yeah.
It's a matter of finding the right time and place to do it. Right now, we're in the middle of this multi-dimensional Borg story arc. It's not really a top contender for making an appearance here, but who knows?
One day,
We
maybe.
can't talk about it going content, so we don't know.
Duncan Idaho wants to know how complex can you make the effects of power applies? Are there set parameters to use, or can you get creative here?
Oh, wow. Okay, so typically a power has attributes like you see here, looking at malicious AI. When you apply this, it can apply a hold, it can apply a power mode. There's data later on that says that this is impulse offline. It can do some kinetic damage, plasma damage, radiation damage, applies some bonuses to the person that's applying it to their damage. So this gives them things like level specific bonuses to damage. And then trigger complex. So it can fire something else off when something is triggered on it. In this case, malicious AI says, if the target has been killed, then I trigger firing malicious AI on another target nearby. And that one
Is
we
the
did
tag for
specifically
has been killed just killing?
kill in. And what that means is
Okay.
that this target has taken a kill event. That event came in to the target.
Got it.
As we
I
can
thought
see
somebody
here,
had just
the
programmed it
target.
as killing.
Killing it. Yeah. So we can get pretty complicated. There's trigger simples, trigger complexes, apply powers, grant powers. All of these things are different kinds of wrappers to futz around with different numbers. And sometimes these numbers can do really weird things. We can affect friction and traction so that your ships can power slide or rotate without changing their direction of motion, which we do with things like piloting powers. We can affect other kinds of movement. We can cause loops of things that affect other things. So that's how you get stuff that's like, this is a power that affects the cooldowns of other powers. This is a power that affects a weapon cycle haste. That trigger complex on malicious AI makes it so that if you kill something while it's under malicious AI, it jumps to someone else. And that makes it so that if you have a powerful ship that does a lot of damage, malicious AI is still useful because you could throw it on an enemy, the enemy gets exploded 2 seconds later, and then the malicious AI jumps to someone else. Power is still useful. We've actually talked about doing this with other powers, such as plasma fires, making a trait that's so that, say, Romulan characters, maybe, I don't know, picking something at random, could slot a trait that says if you have a plasma fire on a target and that target gets destroyed, the plasma fire jumps to someone else.
Ooh.
So lots and lots of flexibility in the system. There are plenty of ways to hang yourself, as I did when I was first implementing gravity kills.
I
That,
don't know
yeah,
if you've told that story. You told that in the panel we did, but I don't know if you've ever told it on stream about how
yeah,
you
I've mentioned it a
actually
couple of
created a
times.
black hole.
Well, I didn't create a real black hole, but I simulated the tidal forces of actual black hole gravity on a server. That brought the test server down. And then the programmer said, don't do that, number too big. Aha, yes. Well, once you get past this distance, you're spaghetti anyway, so I could just stop simulating the increasing ramp up of forces at this point. Uh, but it was a fun little experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are many, many ways in the cryptic engine to hang yourself.
Uh,
Um, so the reason I brought up malicious AI is that I wanted to talk about something that both malicious AI and the tractor beam catapult and organic nebula all suffered from that I recently took a swing at along with some of our team. And that was that if you had multiple instances of malicious AI, you had one, two, and three, for instance, They did not share a global cooldown. So you could fire off one and then immediately fire off the next one. And this is a very, very simple error to make in our engine. And it goes to what are called categories. So if I am using the base power of malicious AI, it has a category now called malicious AI. And this category has data in a different file that says it has a global cooldown, which is set to, as a default, we usually use half of the regular power cooldown. This malicious AI category didn't exist when we shipped this. Oops, that was an oversight by someone. And as a result, the various levels of malicious AI didn't realize that they were supposed to have a shared global cooldown. Now that that category has been added, that shared global cooldown exists, and you should stop seeing people spamming all these things back to back. Same thing for the other two, Organic Nebula, Tractor Beam Catapult. I did a couple other little things to malicious AI that I'm going to talk about too, though. If
Neat.
you're a PvPer, you may have been one of the folks who noticed that when you get hit by malicious AI, like a bunch of um, your power tray just goes offline. And what's going on there is that this power has, at the top level, two things that it can do here, a hold and a power mode, which is impulse offline. That's later in the data. And it determines which of these it does based on the rank of the target. So if the target is a battleship or a dreadnought, some sort of boss monster, then it just does impulse offline. The creature comes to a halt, but it's still able to do things. But if it's not one of those, then it says, oh, I'm going to put a hold on you. And a hold is much more controlling and has more wide ranging effects on stopping you from doing stuff like using pilot maneuvers and whatnot. Well, when this was originally built, it didn't account for where do players fit into this schema. So
Oh.
I updated it recently, and now it says if you're a player, this new little bit of code on the end here, then apply the impulse offline mode. If you are not a player, not any of these things, then apply the hold, which
So
means that
it will
it's going
bring
to,
you to a stop, but it won't stop you from using your powers and such.
right, exactly. So this is going to be far less intrusive in your PvP scenarios. And it also got this little tag here called debuff. It's got control and debuff tags you can see on these. And what tags do is they interact with other powers. So for instance, if you have a trait, say, that says when you have put a control on an enemy, they take more damage from you. The way that that power works is that it looks at your enemy and says, if your enemy is affected by something that has the control tag, then you get a bonus to your damage. So this was tagged as a control, but it wasn't tagged as a debuff. And what that meant is powers that clear debuffs didn't work on it because it wasn't one. Now that it is correctly tagged as a debuff, many of the powers that you would expect to cleanse holds and impulse offline will work against malicious AI. It's no longer in the category of having two things that can clear it. So this power you can deal with much more effectively. Finally, you may remember that I talked about having magnitude on the power that we talked about before as its type, which says if a modifier gets applied to this, it affects the magnitude, how strong it is. But the other type is duration, which I have here. Originally, when it shipped, this was set to type none. And what that meant was that this thing lasts for its duration of 15 seconds here, and it is not affected by anything that affects controls of hold or power mode type. But we want this to be type duration, which means that things that affect these should affect its duration. And by flipping that switch to say duration, that means its base duration is 15 seconds. But if you have control expertise, your resistance now applies, and that duration will go down, factored based on your control expertise, because they are type duration.
Neat. That's really cool. Bunch of people in chat asked if that means that malicious AI will trigger unconventional systems now. I don't know if you know about that interaction or whether that'll work.
Let's take a look at unconventional systems and see how it functions.
Trex.
Unconventional
Oh,
system.
sorry. Just to answer a
Yeah.
question in chat really quick. Trexpert. This works exactly the same way for bugs on Xbox and PS5. We have, uh, uh, thing changes to powers on a local shard like this should affect Xbox and PS5 exactly the same way. The QA testers do have live kits to do it. But earlier, when you asked this question, you mentioned that you asked about the console camera fix. That was done by Travis actually diving into the code, not using the editor like this. So, he put on his goggles and his motion control gloves and went into the Matrix to fix that one.
Right. Okay, unconventional systems is a totally different kind of power. It's what we call an enhancement, as you can see in the type here. An enhancement is a power that adds effects to another existing power. How does it know what powers it can affect? Through the enhance, attach, and apply expressions that we have here. And all of this gobbledygook basically says this enhancement modifies anything that's a bridge officer power, that's a space control power, or it's tagged as a control, or it is a secondary deflector control power. And it will not apply to itself, and it doesn't apply if it's already started to apply. And what it does to any power that meets that category is it improves their power recharge rate, and it does a power mode application, which says unconventional space, which basically is an internal lockout. So it can only apply when that mode is not on you, and that mode lasts for 20 seconds. So you fire something that is a space control power. Unconventional systems, as an enhancement, says, oh, I'm supposed to affect this because it's a space control power. And it says, okay, power recharge rate is affected by this magnitude, minus 0.07. There's those negative numbers we talked about. Your amount of time it takes for it to recharge goes down. And then for the next 20 seconds, you have the unconventional systems mode, which means that it can't fire off again. Let's look at the base malicious AI power.
Augie says change it to minus 10. No.
Only for you, Augie. So this is, when you actually click the button, this is what's firing. And it does an apply power, which fires off all of this good stuff at your opponent. So this is the power that gets fired when you click the button. So that's the one that unconventional systems would check. And malicious AI is categorized as bridge officer UI, engineering, exotic damage, malicious AI, region space. Unconventional systems is looking for anything that has, where is it? Oop, I'm looking at the wrong line. Sorry. Ha ha ha.
I did not know about that.
Bridge officer and control space, or has power tag control, or has secondary deflector control. Malicious AI, the base power is not tagged as a control here. It does have bridge officer UI, but it's not tagged as control space. That means it does not qualify for unconventional systems to apply to it. Now, if people think that it should, then we would add those tags to malicious AI, and then unconventional systems would work on it.
People who work on the game, not people that.
Oh, right. Yes, we're not taking a vote here. This is not a democracy. But yeah, if people above my pay grade say, hey, Heinig, change this so unconventional systems works on it, then I would certainly do so. And that's how we would go about doing that.
Nice. Joseph Trevino, the zoom option on console, we just got a confirmed fix for that today. So it should be coming out to console soon, TM. Hopefully not, hopefully very soon. But, it's harder to get updates to console, so we'll see. I'm not going to promise on any particular date. Yeah, Sovereign 42. We are making a democracy of democracy. This is managed democracy here, is what you're experiencing.
So tractor beam catapult, same sort of thing. The power was lacking a power category on it. So we created a power category, tractor beam catapult, and set it to have a global cooldown. So now if you have multiple instances of tractor beam catapult, you've got a global cooldown that is shared between them. For the nebula, so organic nebula, this power is a little more tricky. It's actually summoning an entity. The nebula itself is what we call internally a critter. And critters can be starships, and they can be all sorts of things, like a heavy torpedo is a critter. But in this case, the nebula itself is a critter, and that critter gets summoned by a power, and then it gets put into the world, and its costume is the nebula. And within that area of the critter, it is running this power, a power that does the AoE of the organic nebula, which in itself just says fire this other power on anyone that's in the nebula. Why is there a level of abstraction there? There are sometimes targeting reasons. It's more complicated than I want to get into here. But because of the way that our engine handles targeting, sometimes if you want to do something weird like anyone that's area gets affected by a power that then affects everyone around them, you have to apply a power to the person that's in the area that then has different targeting.
Neat.
And here's what the Organic Nebula does. As you can see, it does modifiers to all sorts of things. Your stealth rating, your turn rate, flying, shield power, stuff like that. A lot of them are classed as buffs, so you'll see a little icon indicating that stuff's going on. And all of these different magnitudes tie into how all those systems work. So these really high magnitudes go into the stealth system, which tends to use very high numbers. And then these much lower magnitudes go into things like shield power. Well, the minus 200 maybe not so much, because your shield power gets rapidly drained by being in the nebula, but you get the effects of cloak. This was recently rebuilt by part of our team internally, specifically in order to deal with the server load issues that we've been seeing on it. By putting the power category on the base power, giving it an organic nebula power category, we gave it a global cooldown. So once again, you can't just spam multiple levels of it. And then by adding in these various stack groups, we are able to say, okay, if there are multiple overlapping nebulas affecting the player, only one of them, the strongest one, actually takes effect and the others get ignored, instead of the engine trying to apply all of them at once, all of which was contributing to some of our server lag from this power. Once all of these changes are in and published, you guys should see much better performance on our use of this power.
Hooray! Quick note to all the chats, but specifically, mostly Twitch chat. We are fixing the bugs that Jesse has planned to fix today, but we can't take bugs that you guys throw at us from chat and go, oh, I'm going to fix that right now. We'd have to investigate the bug and figure out the cause, and we don't have time for all of that. That's hours of Jesse's life. But we are looking at a lot of the things that you've mentioned.
Yeah, there's some trickery here. Some of these are bugs that were already fixed. Some were ones that I already investigated and knew that we could fix on stream.
Yeah. We just wanted to let you guys what we wanted to open the curtain a little bit and let you guys see what goes on behind it.
Mm-hmm. And we love your
faces. That sentence, man. Omniscient Ziltoid, I've seen your request come in 3 or 4 times. I know, bro, but I don't know if we can if we can add a free camera on PlayStation. I'll ask.
Yeah. That's totally
Ryan says,
outside
now you know
of
how
my
the sausage is fixed.
Right. Hi, Ryan.
So a lot of folks in chat, especially Augie, are saying, I would love to play with this. This is obviously an internal tool that we can't give away to anyone else. It's beautiful and also complicated and old and breaks in fun ways sometimes. But yeah, it's not something we can release for people to play with, unfortunately.
Right. Like some of you remember the Foundry. Hi, Duncan. And none of this was exposed to the Foundry. Players did not have the opportunity to mess around with the power system because, like I said before, the power system is a great way for you to cause all kinds of havoc without realizing it. By missing a tag, you can make it so that items don't have global cooldowns, so that a power affects everything instead of just the thing that it's supposed to affect. So you can have enhancements that are affecting powers on someone else. You may recall when we added Admiral Janeway to the game, and she appears on Earth Space Dock at certain points. And then there was a brief period where people were doing something, and suddenly she was running around whacking folks. And that's because she has a special power on her to determine whether or not she shows up for you based on where you are in the mission track. But this power was accepting enhancements, powers that affect other powers, that could then throw her into combat. So I had to go in and make it so that the visibility condition power didn't affect enhancements from other powers. Lots and lots of ways to break the game.
So many. So
Yeah.
many. All at once. All for us.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What
All
else
right.
should we take a look at?
Yeah, what else have you guys got? What other questions you have for Jesse about game design? This is your opportunity to ask questions to someone who has been in game design longer than some of you have been alive. Uh, uh, if the lag was on the server, why was not everyone affected? Some people have different hardware, different internet connections, different. It's you
Right.
using the power so that you make the calculations. So that's why.
Yeah, when you're using a power, it affects your client, and then depending on the power, it might just affect your client, or it might also affect the server. Um, so a lot of latency issues depend partly on how much loads it putting on the server, how much loads it putting on your internet, how much is it affecting individual clients out there. So, for instance, we have a lot of effects that go off in our game. Shocking, I know. And an older computer may have trouble rendering all of those effects, and you get what's called effects dropout, where suddenly you're not seeing beams or torpedoes shooting because it just can't handle rendering everything all at once. And then a newer, flashier computer, it's just a giant screen of white and red and yellow because there's so much going on. Um, and similarly, we use a system called partitioning to handle how memory works on maps. So I'm currently loaded into a space test map. And I've got a test dummy ship. You've probably seen these before from some of our other system designers. Um, and if I were on a live server loaded into this map, other players could be loaded into what's called a different partition of it. And this recognizes, oh, there's like a planet here and another planet over here, and then all of this sky file. And no matter what player is loaded into the map, all of these things exist for them. So that information is all shared. So the server only has to load it once. It knows for anyone who's on this map, it's got this moon and this planet and this sky file. But information about like where are the enemies that I'm fighting, that might be specific to me. So that gets partitioned into a separate piece of memory, and each player has their own partition. This means that you can wind up in scenarios sometimes where a map will have multiple partitions where things that a player is doing are affecting other people who aren't even on the same partition because they are sharing some amount of memory. Um, or conversely, that you might be not seeing any sort of lag while you're using a power as you're playing by yourself, whereas your buddy who's playing a 5-person TFO is seeing a ton of lag on the same map because he's in a different partition where someone else is using other powers.
Yeah. So there's a interesting question from Sovereign 42. Can you describe what the investigation process is for a bug?
Well, depends on the bug. QA catches a lot of our bugs, and they typically are playing the game. And usually, when we create new content, we submit it to QA with here's what we're making, here's its intention, some documentation about what we built, how it's supposed to work, how you get it, how it turns on, how it turns off. And then QA makes a test plan. They say, okay, we need to test this in different environments. Can I get this power the way they said? Does it do what they say? Does it turn off? Does it get affected by other powers in the way that's expected, like on conventional systems? Does it clean up if I remove the console? It turns off, goes away. All of these things go into their test plans. A ton of different qualities to test, and then these get assigned out to different QA testers to go through this checklist on the test plan and figure out what things are working as expected. When QA runs into something and they're not sure, typically they just ask the designer. They might message me and go, "Hey Jesse, is this supposed to turn you into a giant pink cat in space?" I'll say, no. Write up a JIRA, that tracking program that we mentioned before, and send that over to me to investigate and show me how did you get that to happen. And QA will follow up with steps saying, this is what I did, and then a screenshot. And here's what happened. Giant pink cat in space. And then I will start going down and narrowing down the possible culprits. Okay, was it actually this power or was it something connected to that power? Can I get it to happen if I do the same steps that QA does? A lot of this is isolating down to individual variables. All right, we know that QA saw it on this map, on this mission when they used this power. So reproduce those exact steps because we don't want to be in the position of going, well, maybe it's the mission, maybe it's the map, maybe it's this power or some other power. Try and figure out exactly what one thing is causing it. Um, Once we've narrowed that down, the designer investigates, oh, how can I fix this and get the results that I want? tests it, sends it to QA for further, more robust testing, and then if it passes all of that, it goes to production, gets into a build, and goes out to all of you. Um, but how we get finding like these bugs in the first place, QA finds some. Some are submitted on our forums by players and can go through customer service and then come to QA for verification. QA says, yep, I just saw this bug that players are reporting, and here's how it happens, and they send it over to the design team. And then we get scheduled some time to take a look at it and see how can we fix this. Sometimes I'll be playing the game myself and I'll run into something and go, that's terrible, and then I'll fix it.
He actually says it out loud just like that.
Yeah, but I'm in a home office at the moment, so nobody knows unless I'm on stream like this. Um, for example, some players may have noticed if you recently played Sphere of Influence, when you get to the Simon Says part where it shows you a couple of icons, it flashes up a green one and a red one, and then it says you need to play those icons now. The icons aren't appearing. Well, we can't reproduce that internally. I tested it by playing through the mission in this editor environment, like you see here, where I loaded into that map and played through it, and it worked fine. So then I went, that's a little suspicious that it works fine, but we're still getting a bunch of reports with this. So I jumped into Holodeck. I loaded up my own character, and I played through the mission. Sure enough, it broke exactly where it was reported. And so I figured out, okay, here's where in the mission this is going on. I'm not entirely sure what's causing us. Probably has to do with a memory load issue for the effect itself, or possibly one of those partition issues that I mentioned before, where the map is out of sync with where it should be. And then I talked with our software team and said, okay, we've got a weird bug that doesn't show up in the development environment, but it does show up on live, and I verified it. And our team is already looking into fixing this one.
Neat. I have a moment where I need to mock someone, because Axel Hopfinger over on YouTube is doing the old classic joke of, wait, Cryptic has QA? Since when? My brother and Sarek, the QA team on Star Trek Online are some of the hardest working, most dedicated people that you will ever find. And the fact that they are a small team means that they will not catch every single thing. No one can catch every single thing, even if you have 300 people working QA. But when you have the size of our QA team, it's just not going to happen. The stuff that they miss will be found when we release things live and thousands of people play it, because it's something that only comes up when thousands of people play a thing. So do not mock the QA. They are great at their job and they are doing really well. Thank you.
Let me show you all something. This is every power in the game. Every power in the game has potentially the ability to interact with every other power in the game. There is no human plan by which you can test for every single one of these interactions. The best way to get that set of interactions is to release them to a public of hundreds of thousands of players and see where they do stuff, and then watch Augie's stream because he'll find it. The QA team's job typically involves finding the powers that we give them and the missions and the TFOs, playing through them, looking for obvious breakpoints, things where this mission didn't work. I bought this power from the powers trainer and I didn't get the power. Or I opened up a lockbox and this thing that I got from it isn't what it says it was supposed to be. It's a reward from the previous lockbox. The icon on this is wrong. This character model is giving me the wrong thing. I opened up a bridge officer and instead of getting a Cardassian, it gave me a Klingon, even though it said it was a Cardassian on the box. So they find all of these things where we have documented this is what we expect and it doesn't meet those expectations. They also find cases where this thing in the game completely broke. The player can't continue because I can't equip this item. I can't finish this mission. I can't turn it in. I can't take this mission and start it. I try to transwarp to a map and it breaks and does nothing. And they find all of these things and they send them to us. Imagine a world where there was no QA department and all of these things actually went live. The game would be literally unplayable, as people like to say. Now, our QA department, more than that, they have developed a wealth of institutional knowledge. And what I mean by this is our QA department is not just good at playing the game and finding these bugs and going, oh, well, I tried to play the mission and it wouldn't let me turn it in, so write it up. But they have learned over many years of playing the game, okay, this thing broke in a particular way. So when I go through Sphere of Influence and I play it on a live server, I get to the part where it's playing these effects that are showing me what buttons I'm supposed to push, and I don't see anything. I've seen a bug like this before where it didn't play an effect that was timed for a specific thing. And that was in Dust to Dust when the floor is electrocuted, and suddenly I'm not seeing the electrical effect playing. And then they can connect the dots and go, there's a problem with the memory allocation of effects. We need software to start looking at what's going on with effects playing on a live environment that's causing some of these effects not to play. Because this isn't just a bug that's affecting one mission, it's a bug that's affecting multiple missions. But knowing that this sort of thing has affected other missions before lets them put those pieces together and find them. QA's role is really stopping us from shipping stuff that is completely, utterly broken. And they are our first line of defense in doing so. But they also act as a sort of institutional memory about all of the horrible ways in which I have broken the game in the past and not letting me do it again. I can't speak highly enough of our QA department. There is no MMO at the complexity level that we have. 14 years of content, millions and millions of bytes and equations and expressions and state machines all going on, interacting in unforeseen ways all at the same time. There is no methodology by which every single bug will ever be found. And this is actually something that they teach in computer science. I remember studying that. Um, our QA department are heroes as far as I am concerned. And the notion of lol, Cryptic doesn't have QA lol, they constantly ship buggy stuff. We are constantly trying to ship stuff that isn't buggy. For a game of the size and detail level that we have, that is probably not a 100% achievable goal. But when we find bugs, we will fix them, like I did on the stream today. That's why it's important for you to keep reporting them through CS or through our forums. Use the official channels that Ambassador Kale tells you, and that's how they get to us, and we know to take a crack at fixing these things.
There we go. Okay, let's see. Nick NB, if you want to contact me about stuff like giveaways, I'm assuming it's giveaways. My email for players is ambassadorkel@gmail.com. Passionate Soul wants to know if you know what the languages are used to create the tools you're showing.
So all of our underlying engine is built in C and C++, but the spreadsheet editor and mission editors and the various editors that designers use, while they are originally built in C++, we use C-like expressions. So for instance, I've got an expression here that says the value for this perception modifier is some fixed number plus a variable minus another number plus something times a variable. And we can use division, we can use if-then statements, and all of them are evaluated in a C-like fashion. C may be an old language, but it's the granddaddy of languages because a lot of its underlying functionality has served well and has been copied in more modern languages. So if you're going to study a language, definitely learn some C.
Um, Duncan, I'm not sure I understand your question. Can you break it down a little more and explain like I'm five? Uh, thank you. I have a feeling you're using some Foundry author terminology. I'm just gonna.
It's
It's just so I
possible.
don't have to keep typing responses. Private Felix. Uh, our game is continuing the story of the Star Trek universe. So if you were to be able to play as Captain Kirk, that would mean that you would be able to make changes to how Captain Kirk's future is in our game, and that would disrupt a lot of the storytelling. So that's why we don't do stuff like that. Uh,
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons why we don't typically have the player play as a specific character from the shows very much. We did do Quark's Lucky Seven, but oftentimes that also comes with hurdles with dealing with the actor in question. Like, if
yeah.
we wanted you to play as Kirk, we have to talk to William Shatner to get likeness rights. And sure, Paramount CBS has rights to a lot of stuff in the show, but some actors have individually negotiated rights. And oftentimes those things just involve legal hurdles that are insurmountable for a typical live game.
Um, Private Felix, if that's something you want, just make the character as close as you can in the trailer. We're never going to make it available that you can purchase the ability to play as Worf. Sorry about that. It would also confuse other players. We just don't want that.
Right.
Okay, Oliver Roger, thank you for giving me more details on the Taylor bug. That is a bug that's actually affecting both Star Trek and Neverwinter right now, where if you rotate the character, it turns 2D. Keith, our lead programmer, is working on it. Our core team, programming team, is working on it. I believe they may already have a solution in place, but I don't know when that's going live to get fixed.
Yeah.
Okay, so
High priority. Very noticeable.
Duncan wants to know. Oh, I see. Duncan, yes, we can do that. It's possible to allow people to only have a certain dialogue option, say if their character is a Klingon or if their character is a certain background, like tactical or engineering.
Mm-hmm.
That's something we already can do and do do. Heh, do
Do
do.
you? Yep. We're adults.
Adults doing
Yeah.
adult things.
Yeah, that's all handled through a different editor, which is called the Contact Dialog Editor, since Duncan mentioned it. I'll bring that up. Um,
Actually, if you're going in
so,
there, search for fiction
yeah,
blogs. Make everyone happy and show them all the work I did that didn't
yeah,
go live.
absolutely. So let's bring the editor scale up so everyone can see the text. So this is a contact editor. As you can see, it's not a spreadsheet because it's not involving all of that kind of math. Um, but in this case, Kale made these debriefing sessions that go to different contacts. Each of these is linking to another dialogue. So you'll have display text that appears on a button, and then when you click on that button, it links to another blog or to a particular sub piece of text here. So, for instance, here's debriefing session 28, which was one of our blog entries way back in the day.
Yep.
All the text, all in place. All of these formatting characters are to create paragraph breaks and line breaks, change the margins and whatnot so that it's all formatted correctly. All of that stuff typically has to be done by hand.
Yep.
Um,
I
and then it
actually,
has,
in order to get this process
yep,
done, the text part anyway, I actually outsourced it to Twitter and had a bunch of people do all that for me, which was really nice.
yep.
And then I ran into
And
the
then
issue
when
with
you're done
adding
reading it,
images to all of them, taking hours
yeah,
and days. And woo!
yeah, a lot of work. But as an example, if we wanted to say, oh, there's a special case for this if you are playing a Romulan, I could say, okay, we've got a couple of buttons on here. I'm going to add another action to this. And then I would say, I want a visible expression here that says, um, player puppet is species group, ground, and do something like that. And what
So
this
what
would
did you just do?
say,
Talk us through it.
player puppet is species group. So it says, okay, I'm going to look at the player's puppet, that's the currently active character, or one of your character models, and say, is your ground puppet, so not your ship, but your captain who appears on the ground, from the Romulan species group, which includes all kinds of Romulans, whether they are Fed Romulan or Klingon aligned Romulan, male or female Romulan. So if you fit any of those types, then this text button is visible to you. Alternatively, I could do this and put it in the interact expression. If I do that, this button will appear regardless of whether you're Romulan or not, but you can't click on it if you aren't. You'll see it, but it'll be grayed out. And that little reconnecting there means that my computer's having some trouble connecting
Oh
to the
no!
cryptic editor. So we might be cutting it short here. We'll see what
Well,
happens.
it's not that short actually. We've been
Nope,
going
there
for
it
an hour
goes.
or
There
so.
it goes.
Okay.
All right. So pretty straightforward. This can get very complicated when you're doing things like, is the player a Cardassian aligned with Starfleet and also not a Romulan faction character and things like that. So we can get very tricksy with those. But yeah, Kale did in fact put all of the blogs into text format there
Yep. I
for
just
us
got to
to be
go
able
through and
to
add all the images.
hook them into the game.
Woo! And then I got to
Yeah,
get you to help me put them in the game. Yeah, once I get that all done. All right. Well,
you
folks,
know
we
it.
have been going for an hour. This has been fascinating. Jesse, thank you so much for this breakdown of all of this stuff, and thank you for everything you do for the game. You're amazing. I am going to look for someone for us to raid. Um, Jesse, what's the weirdest thing that's happened to you? Like the weirdest bug you've ever had to fix on Star Trek Online? I was gonna say the weirdest thing that's ever happened to
Weirdest.
you, but that's not that's gonna be
That's really
that's a
opening the
different
door. You
thing.
don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Weirdest stow bug. Um, Gosh, there have been so many. And usually they're my own fault. That's my favorite part is when I'm looking at a mission and I go, "Oh my gosh, what kind of terrible designer did this?" And then look at the check-in notes. Oh, I did. Um, uh, let's see. Um, I mean, the Janeway bug that I mentioned before was pretty idiosyncratic. That was definitely a weird one, um, because like I did not foresee players having an enhancement that would affect the power that made Janeway visible only in certain mission steps, and thus making it so that she has been affected by the enhancement and is now in combat and is running around beating people up. Um, let's see. Um, it's always fun working with powers that do costume swaps, things like assimilating people, or when you have the ghost candle and the ghost goes and defeats an enemy and then steals its costume, um, because you can get your targeting wrong and as a result get the wrong costume. So like the person that was just defeated by the ghost candle suddenly gets the ghost costume instead, or the ghost defeats an enemy and then suddenly it gets the player's costume. What? How did that happen? um, the aforementioned gravity kills bug was a ton of fun because that was, I think, the first time that I had ever actually crashed a test server just using the power system. Um, and
You were too powerful, Jesse.
Yeah. Oh, so another fun little one. We had a power a while back that I wanted to do where it would fire a bunch of very small shots from a ship, like railgun, auto fire sort of thing. But they hit and they're exploding, and while they're hitting you, they're causing your ship to get spun, to be turned slightly each time you take a hit, so that it makes it harder for you to navigate. And the way that I did it involved putting in a power where I said, I'm going to do a command that forcibly sets your rotation. And so the way that that would look is something like this. I would say, AI command, I'm going to force it to execute a specific piece of code. And then for that command, I'm going to say, set position, rotation, and facing, and then get the player's position, and then I would decompose that into a series of variables, and then alter one of them, and then push it back into the position, rotation, and facing. So this was doing a bunch of math all at the same time, and making it so that the player's ship was jittering as it was getting hit. And it looked really cool. And the software guy says, you cannot do that because the way that you are overriding their position with an AI command isn't interacting directly with the movement sequencer. So our game's prediction algorithms that say, okay, as you're turning, we can project that your ship is going to be going this way and therefore make effects get predictively set to go that way is not going to work right. So, lesson learned, I had to not do that.
All
Um,
right. Well, we found who we're going to stream, or who we're going to raid.
Excellent.
So I will say, Jesse, again, thank you very much. It is always a pleasure to have you on the show,
It's
and
been a
have you
ton
as
of
a
fun.
friend.
Thank you. Likewise, Mike.
Folks, we will see you in 2 weeks, which is, I believe, the 19th. So hopefully we'll be having that stream we talked about, but I'll let you know.
Do I need to end with a joke?
No, I asked the weird story instead of the joke.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because
Got
people
it. Got it.
don't like being put on the spot with a joke, even though I always have
Ah,
4 dad
okay.
jokes ready
I've
to
got
go.
a joke. I'll save it for later, though.
Oh, yeah,
Unless you want
okay.
me to tell now. Oh, okay.
How
All
long
right.
is it?
Great. It's very short.
Good, do it.
All right. I used to be an expert on boomerangs, but that was like 20 years ago.
It's all
But
coming back to
it's
me now.
coming back to me now.
That's the good stuff right there. All right,
That is the good stuff.
folks,
All
we are
right. Thanks,
starting up the
everyone.
raid. Yeah, thanks for actually. Ryoko D says thanks for actually. Anyway, thank you for actually coming with a joke. All right, folks, it has been a pleasure. We will see you next time. Bye bye, everyone. Bye bye. Bye
Bye
bye. I'm gonna say
bye.
bye bye a
Bye
bunch of times because otherwise I
bye.
keep cutting myself off mid goodbye. Bye bye.